Hi, I'm Dr. Rajani. Do you have sunspots, brown spots? Some people call them freckles, and they're building up over time. You've tried skincare, hydroquinones, maybe kojic acid, maybe even some light peels, but you need to go to the next step. Well, aging of the skin, you get sagging, you get wrinkles and fine lines, but sometimes you just need to do something more to get rid of brown spots, to get glow, and to add youthful light reflection back. I'm going to take you through my top 3 ways to get rid of brown spots, solar keratosis, sunspots, whatever you want to call it. But what we know is when you have good light reflection, when your skin is clear, and you look more youthful and glowing, people associate that with being healthy, with being more attractive, and with being younger. So it's an important part. We're going to go through the top 3, and my number 1 is the least expensive of them all. This channel is all about education, letting you know what services are out there, what are the pros and cons, what's the price range of some of these, what should you be looking at that's best for your skin or that suits the results that you want or your personality. If that sounds good to you, like, subscribe, and share these videos with your friends because other people will likely benefit. Let's dive into the top 3. So my number 3 is CO2 laser. And I put it at number 3 because it's not obtainable to everyone in that they don't have the downtime for it. A lot of times it's a single treatment, but it resembles more of a burn. We use fractionated CO2, so there's areas in between that aren't treated and there's areas treated, and that helps with the healing process versus 20 years ago when there was full ablation. But it targets water, 10,600 nanometer would be the wavelength, and a laser targets specific wavelengths as opposed to something else I'm going to talk about, which is broad spectrum. So whenever you're talking about laser, yes, skin color is important, downtime is important, and the effectiveness. So some people will sacrifice and take more downtime, less treatments, and they want it all done in one shot. CO2 laser is more towards what you're looking at. And people look better longer for it, meaning that if you do a CO2, yes, you might want to repeat it in 2 to 3 years, but if you did nothing, you're going to look better because it's quite intense and a deeper type of treatment than the other 2 that I'm going to talk about, which needs more maintenance. What would it cost you? The average price in the United States for a CO2 fractionated modern type of laser is somewhere around $2,500 to $4,500, depending how much damage, how much downtime you're willing to take, and what part of the country you're in. Frankly, some parts of the country are 3 times more expensive than others. But it's one of the areas, like all these type of treatments, don't use price as your guide. You can find a great deal. Doesn't mean if something's a lower price, it's bad, but do your research on who's going to do it because this can go wrong. Watch my complete video right up here on CO2 laser. It goes much more into depth on exactly what it is. My number 2 treatment for sun damage and brown spots are Erbium Yag type of lasers. So we're talking not the wavelength of a CO2, which is around 11,600, but more along 2940, 1550, 1920. In that range of laser. It is a laser, not broad spectrum, and it does disrupt the dermis, but they're very tunable. You can go superficial to quite deep, so not as much downtime to quite a bit of downtime. When you get into that realm, you get unhappy patients because it didn't do enough, but they didn't want the downtime, so they didn't go very deep, and they had a day or 2 or 3 of downtime, of redness, and then they said, well, I didn't see enough of a result. As you go more intense in the power and the depth and the number of passes, you're going to have more downtime, but people have to understand that you're going to have more redness, you might have some crusting, it might take you 5 to 7 days to heal, as opposed to maybe the 2 to 3 weeks from a CO2 laser. So there's a fine line, and you have to be very honest and upfront with your provider, let them know where you're at. But doing a few of these treatments every year, especially if you get sun exposure, is still cost effective. The price range for these will be anywhere from $800 to $2,000, depending on what you're getting, the experience of the person doing the procedure, and how much sun damage you have. So my solid number 2 is around the Erbium Yag Laser, and there are many people that threw away their CO2 laser in favor of Erbium Yags because they feel they can get the result of the CO2 without those side effects, particularly hypopigmentation and the prolonged recovery. My number 1 treatment that's accessible to just about everyone is IPL, or intense pulse light. It's broad spectrum of light. I did them starting 20 years ago, so this technology has been around a long time. You use different filters. You can target reds, browns. You can even do skin tightening with them. And I recommend people do 4 or 5 of these a year. They're much less expensive than CO2. There's less downtime. An average price for someone well-versed in doing these treatments, you're going to get a nice result. Typically think $399 to $699 per session. And there's no real disruption of the dermis as opposed to the other 2 treatments. So whilst pre-sun exposure is really important because these pick up pigment, so you don't want to be in the sun before the treatment. Post-care is also important, as with all of these, but just because it's IPL or photofacial, and just because it's less expensive, doesn't mean you can have side effects. Some of the worst side effects, burns, hypo and hyperpigmentation, occur with IPL, so be careful with this as well. But it's my number 1 treatment because it does so many things. You can target so many things. There's not as much downtime. It's accessible and less expensive. But yes, you want to do 3 or 4 a year, and people are happier that way. I have a complete video here on photofacials, IPL, that you can watch and educate on. So watch all those videos on my top 3 to educate yourself. And of course, skincare is an integral part. Stay tuned here. Keep your skin and body beautiful, healthy, and vibrant.